band has been really heavy on my mind lately. This album here was my introduction to the band. When this album came out, of course I was listening to a lot of metal, but I was also listening to bands like Agent Orange and, I was still listening to a lot of INXS and stuff like that. But yeah, Faith No More, they came in, once I started listening to them, I was like, wow, these guys are all over the place. So this band was really the introduction to me hearing a band cover a lot of styles. You would hear about music either through the radio, MTV, or for the most part, word of mouth. You would always hear about certain bands and you would hear about it from people who thought they were just too cool for the masses. And the moment those bands became available to the masses, or they kind of changed their sound a little bit, a lot of those guys would get upset and they would start to hate those bands. Now, I wouldn't necessarily hate on those bands after they became popular or they sold out, as they would say, but I would feel like that band wasn't mine anymore, and I would get a little bit bummed out and I would just kind of move on. I mean, this happened to me with countless bands. Well, anyway, one day I ran into a group of my friends and they were all like just freaking out. They're like, oh my God, you got to hear the new Faith No More album. So when this album came out, it really turned the music world upside down. None other than Angel Dust, a true classic. This album is definitely one of my favorites. You're gonna hear that from me quite a bit, but I have a lot of music I love and a wide variety of music. This album, when it came out, our minds were blown. I mean, trying to wrap our heads around this album and where it was going, oh my God, it was something else. So today, the whole point to this video is I'm gonna get into this album a little bit, and I'm gonna get into Billy Gould because he writes a lot of the stuff for Faith No More. He's kind of like the silent leader of the band. And he does some pretty amazing bass work on all their recordings. He just does really cool stuff. So I'm gonna pick out some of my favorites and talk about this album. So here we go. Before we get into this, you're not gonna hear any reaction videos on this channel, okay? I'm just gonna leave it like that. None of this stuff is reaction. I lived this stuff, okay? I lived it like you wouldn't believe. I was there for a lot of it if it came through Atlanta. But I'm just talking as a music fan, as a music listener. None of the stuff you hear me picking out on this channel or dissecting, it's not reaction stuff. This is stuff that I truly love. It's not a gimmick, okay? So I probably didn't need to say that. You guys know why you're here. The people who subscribe, you get it. But I don't know, man. The reaction stuff, it's a little trendy to me. And that's it. I'm not gonna call anyone out in particular. So we're gonna start with the first track, Land of Sunshine. Once again, this is not a reaction, but I've never really sat down and tried to learn how to play anything on this album. I just listen to it, I just enjoy it. And that's the kind of music lover I am. So this particular track, it's kind of one of those tracks where it's got that carnival kind of feel to it at certain parts during the chorus and everything. I knew from the moment this album opened up with this song that I was in for one heck of a ride, and it doesn't let go. It's one of those albums that really takes you on a journey from start to finish, and it really, as a music lover, it really did something for me. It changed my life, and it affected a lot of people. It had a very strong influence on a lot of people, a lot of musicians around me, including myself. Here's the CD, here's what it looks like. I also have it on cassette. I have a lot of CDs that I actually had on cassette first. I think I bought my last cassette tape probably in 93, maybe 94. But definitely by 94, I was like, man, it's got to be CD or nothing. I can't do this anymore. But yeah, I mean, the stuff has some pretty crazy images on there. So here it is. I always got a laugh out of this, and Then of course there's this picture here. I never knew that he was standing on something and all these guys are standing here. Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, there's some trickery going on here. Anyway, so you heard a little bit of Land of Sunshine. We're gonna roll into Caffeine, which is the next track. I'm telling you, the way this album flows, it's just like, wow, man, it's so good. This one's crazy. Another thing that made this album so special, this album was also very prog rock. And what I mean by that was like the changes and how deep some of the songs would go. It's definitely a prog alternative metal album, really. That is the best way to describe this album. It is on a whole another level. Now, this was their big single off of this record. Billy, he doesn't have to prove anything. He's just... Here's another crazy one, RV. Here's one of my favorite tracks on the album. It kind of had an Alice in Chains feel to it, especially with the vocal. This video would turn out to be very long if I went through it and started dissecting all of the songs on this album. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to talk about my thoughts on this album, on this band, and how I still feel about them today. The first time I saw Faith No More was in, I want to say 94 or 95, and it was supporting this album, King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime. This album's good. It's good. Jim Martin's not on there, but it's a good album. I had fun with it. But the funny thing is they started so early, and by the time I got there, I only got to see them play like 2 songs and it was over. And man, I was pissed when I got there and found that out. This was kind of like what happened when I went to go see Bjork. And I don't even know if she's ever been back here to Atlanta since then. And this was in 95 as well. Started teaching me to get to these shows a lot earlier. Saw Mr. Bungle a few years later, still in the 90s. We'll talk more about that another time. That album's crazy. It's all over the place. But I finally got to see Faith No More 7 years ago, summer 2015. It was either summer or fall of 2015. It was an outdoor concert. I actually have some of that footage. That was a great show. I mean, Mike Patton can still... Certain singers I think of that come to mind where their voice just seems to get stronger over the years. Mike Patton is one of those singers. He's a phenomenal singer. Phenomenal vocalist, you know. This album was definitely an experimental one. I highly recommend that you check it out if you're someone who has never heard of Faith No More or you're considering listening to them. Yes, there are plenty of reaction videos out there, but like I said, once again, from the top, I lived this stuff. I was around when this stuff was happening, and music was a really special thing. Part of it had to do with my age and that age of discovery and being able to drive, but really from 1990 to 95, that was just quite a time of discovery, an age of discovery in music. Things were changing and trends were coming and going, and I mean, I think that we saw the biggest shift in musical styles and popularity from 1990 to 95. This can't be said without mentioning the whole grunge thing, that whole movement, and you know, being there for the metal and all that, and watching that kind of take a back seat to the grunge. And also the mix of all this stuff going on. You have like bands like Ministry making a huge shift and transition from where they had been coming from, which they were doing this by the late 80s, but you were seeing this something happen with music that was pretty special. And to be there and to witness a lot of these shows and seeing a lot of these legacy bands, like these bands that were, you know, being able to see The Cure in the mid 90s and seeing them play a 3-hour set and 1 hour of just old stuff. I mean, it was a pretty amazing time to be seeing music. I saw a lot of different bands. I've said this before on this channel, but I just have so much to cover and so much to talk about that I'm pretty overwhelmed, to tell you the truth. But I appreciate you guys watching these videos, and I appreciate you watching this video. I appreciate the subscriptions and all that. Thank you very much. I will have another video out to you sooner than later.